Welcome to Charleston County RoadWise. This program is designed to keep Charleston County citizens informed of the many infrastructure improvement projects that are financed by the transportation sales tax. And now, here's your host, Cheryl Harleston.
Welcome to today's show. We're going to be talking about utilities. Now you think, why are we going to be talking, and what kind of utilities? Well, why are you talking about utilities? Well, we're talking about utilities on a road program because it has a lot to do with being able to construct a road in the right places without interfering with the various utilities that, believe it or not, are underground. Yes, there are communities that wish they had as many of their utilities underground as we do here in the Charleston area, but of course they don't. So it's a luxury in one way, but it also creates a challenge when an organization like RoadWise, under the Transportation Sales Tax Program, it creates sort of a problem in that, or an issue or concern, in that you got to make sure you don't build the road over these things, over the various lines and pipelines and what have you. So we thought we would get an expert to talk with us about utilities and what they do to make sure that things like electricity and water and all of those kinds of utilities that run underground are not harmed in any way. In other words, like a woman told me in one of our public meetings, is my water going to be shut off? No. There's a process with a number of people involved to ensure that your utilities are not shut off as a consequence of building a road in and around your neighborhood. So I'd like you to meet my guest for today, and his name is James Wilson. And James is with he's an engineer, I would say, and he's also utilities relocation manager. Am I saying that right?
Yes, ma'am. With
the Charleston County RoadWise program. And the Charleston County RoadWise program is also the Transportation Sales Tax Program, and most of you know that. It's nice having you here. It really is. And you know a lot about utilities. And what I've just said to the audience is, all of you who are responsible for utilities, you're going to make sure that our lights, our heat, our cable television, and all of that doesn't get any interference.
Absolutely.
And how do you do that?
Well, we try to start very early in the process with any of the construction projects. Mm-hmm. Once we have an area identified that we know we're going to do improvements to, and we've got a general scope of how the road is going to be widened, I'll start contacting utility owners then, South Carolina Electric and Gas, Charleston Water Systems, and when I contact them early, it's more of a, hey, we've got this project coming down the road. Let's look at the utilities that you have in the area and see where there could possibly be conflicts with the road widening and new infrastructure that we're going to put in.
Well, I'm not sure where all of these utilities are underground. I would assume it's somewhere on the side as opposed to the middle of the road or the middle of the area where the road's going to be built. Is that generally where they are? Typically,
they're outside of the road. In some cases, the road that we're widening has been widened, several times in previous, in years past, and depending on the nature of that road widening, the utility may have stayed where they were, and now they're under the pavement.
Does that cause much havoc?
It doesn't create, it really doesn't cause a greater challenge than the ones that are outside of the road or outside of the road. The only challenge there is it's a lot harder to relocate that utility under the pavement.
Who pays for all of this? You got to dig all of this stuff up, and then you've got to lay it back down. And I don't know, can you just lay it back down the same way it came up, or will changes have to be made with regards to the utility that you dug up?
How it gets reinstalled depends a lot on where it's getting moved to and what other conflicts there are. In some cases, we don't have to relocate the entire line. In the case of the water utilities, a lot of time we can just take a small portion of the line and lower it and put it a little deeper in the ground to get around the conflict.
There are a number of agencies, that's what really gets me. There are a number of agencies, organizations, businesses that own these lines under the right-of-way. So how do you get everybody together to make sure everybody's on the same page?
The biggest thing is to let everybody know the project is coming, and usually when we get to a point where we've gotten construction plans far enough that we know elevations for new drainage lines and where we're going to have to build the road up and maybe have to cut the road down. I'd like to try and get all of the utility owners, a representative from all of them together and meet all together, and then we can kind of talk about who has what lines where and how they can relocate those lines and where they can relocate them to.
And I assume from what we're saying that they meaning the utilities representatives, always know where their lines are located. Or do they get a surprise every once in a while?
Occasionally, everybody gets a surprise once in a while. A perfect example of that is on a project downtown. Just because there's been so much change over the years down there. Sometimes lines have been moved and a good record of that move was not kept. And so a lot of times you'll start out there on construction and there's something that nobody, the utility owner didn't know about it, the designer, nobody knew about it until we actually started digging and found it.
You mentioned design. That's a process where a group of engineers and other types sit down and literally design the entire project and how it's going to look, how much space it's going to take, and all those measurements go into it. Are they considering these utilities that may lie underground, or is that not a part of the potion?
That is part of it, and part of my job as a utility relocation manager is to work with the designers to remind them that, hey, you've got these underground utilities, and there's things that we can do in design that'll meet the project requirements and help us avoid these utilities and making the utilities move. You asked me a question earlier about who pays for it.
Yeah, who?
And in some cases, the utility is required to cover the cost of relocating the facility. And in other cases, the program, the RoadWise program, is responsible for reimbursing the utility owner for that move. In either way, it can end up costing all the rest of us, taxpayers and end users. Johnny Dodds widening is a perfect example. Mount Pleasant Waterworks had to raise their rates to help cover some of the cost of that relocation.
Yeah, we're going to be talking with them later on in the program, and we hear about that. So that has to happen occasionally.
Occasionally it does.
Yeah, what are you going to do? You got to take care of the public. Isn't that first and foremost on your mind? Is
absolutely.
Making sure they get their services, they're not interrupted, and that's what we want to get across, especially to the little lady who said, is my water going to be turned off? Should she worry?
No. And that's part of my job, is making sure that, in cases where we have water main relocations and things like that they're coordinated well enough that if the water has to be shut down, it's done at a time where, say for the middle of the night where there's not a lot of use and it's not going to affect very many customers, so that during the day when you need that water, it's there and you're getting the water that you're paying for.
I have one other point I wanted to make with you, and that is that a lot of the stuff, the utilities, the lines, all of the piping and all that in some parts of the area are pretty old. And I would imagine that this would be an opportunity for the utilities to replace. Do they take advantage of an opportunity like that? Very
much so. You're right. There are some places where, water lines and other facilities are 40, 50 years old, and this, depending on the cost of the relocation, it can be a good opportunity for them to update their facilities and get newer pipes in the ground so that they have less to worry about with a possible failure in the system.
Do you enjoy this work?
I do. It's a challenge every day. So
I bet it is.
It's a challenge every day.
Talking with James Wilson, and we'll be right back with a number of other interesting people representing utilities companies and utilities organizations in our community, and they have something to say about this too. We'll do that shortly.